This elephant refused to move. The guy used a binocular and saw something horrible. An elephant refused to move while crossing a road. To add further intrigue to this mysterious scene, this guy saw something incredibly horrific when he used his binoculars. What could it be? Have you ever heard of a strange yet fascinating story that takes your breath away? Well then, get ready to be blown away, because we have a tale of an elephant refusing to move forward in the middle of the road, and the man determined enough to find out why the elephant is doing so. He got shocked to find out the problem, and so would you. So let's get into our story without much ado. So basically, our story revolves around an elephant who refused to walk even an inch in the middle of the road, and Nigel, who saw this elephant closely to figure out what's wrong with it. Nigel had always lived in Africa and dedicated much of his life to protecting and conserving countless animals from the district. He worked at the wildlife preserve, which spanned an immense expanse of land and housed many different species, including rhinos, elephants, deer, and lions. At the preserve, Nigel and his team did their utmost to protect these majestic creatures. They provided clean food sources, monitored unusual activity, and arranged veterinary care. Every effort they made was towards conserving and preserving animal habitats at this vibrant location. Nigel's years at the preserve had been a lifetime worth of watching animals living free in their natural habitats, striving to ensure they stay that way for generations. Nigel loved his job since it consistently brought him in contact with animals. Trained as a cardiologist, he was often tasked with periodic scans and heart exams on tranquilized creatures, allowing Nigel to be up close and personal with them. But while this started as an exciting job, Nigel always kept in mind that despite the wildlife preserve location, he did run the risk of dealing with wild animals after all. Nigel had experienced days that went entirely wrong when dealing with wild animals. He had seen colleagues hurt, maimed, and even die while doing his work. People warned of danger around him, yet Nigel couldn't fathom any other career path more amazing or rewarding in the world. Experienced staff knew how quickly things could become chaotic when managing dangerous animals, but this did not stop Nigel from respecting his job and finding satisfaction. One day, he was doing his usual rounds when he saw something off in the distance down the long, dusty road of the wildlife preserve. There it was, unmistakably looming on the horizon, an elephant. Was it crossing into the preserve or passing through on its own journey? He didn't have to ponder for too long. It seemed as if it would soon be off the track and away from him. Nigel drove closer and saw the elephant in the middle of the road. It wasn't clearing a path, but staying perfectly still, as if rooted to the ground. Nigel couldn't believe his eyes. How exactly did an enormous beast like that end up standing in the middle of the road with no indication of wanting to move? He had no clue, but he could tell this was not something he expected to see on his drive today. He parked his car and started waiting for the animal to move, but time passed and minutes converted into hours, but the elephant wasn't ready to move an inch. Nigel was constantly thinking about the elephant, and suddenly he hit upon an idea to check out what was wrong with that large animal. Do you love elephants and want to hear more of their stories? Then subscribe to our channel and like the video. Nigel had an extra dose of caution regarding the powerful yet majestic creatures near him. Certainly, these seemingly cuddly lives made for some amazing photos, but he remembered just how defensive and dangerous they could become in a split second. Stopping his car at a safe distance from the serene elephant was exactly what he needed to do. Anything more might put him at risk, and that won't end well all around. He pulled out his binoculars and zoomed in on the elephant. At first, what had occurred was not obvious. Was he waiting to rejoin a herd or merrily grazing? Curiosity nipped at him, and only through a closer look could he ascertain if learning more was possible. He adjusted his view and refined his focus on what this elephant may have been drawing nearer to its answer. Nigel was intent on achieving a clear image of the elephant with his binoculars, so he adjusted the focus until the image came into sharp focus. But when the image finally became clear, Nigel's eyes widened in shock. Every patch of skin on the elephant's body was teeming with painful sores and cysts oozing an unpleasant liquid. He had to try hard to avoid shedding some tears at the plight of such a giant creature dealing with such a horrible infection. In this horrific sight, Nigel felt a sudden wave of sorrow wash over him and decided to help the poor animal anyway. He realized that the elephant was standing there waiting for someone to take notice of his painful cysts and provide him with the required medical assistance, and he successfully got Nigel's attention. Nigel instinctively grabbed his radio and contacted the base, informing them of his sighting. He was instructed to stay in his vehicle from a safe distance and not take any chances, but Nigel couldn't help himself. His curiosity pushed him, and he edged closer to the distressed animal for a better view. Seeing it in such distress tore at Nigel's heart, so he knew he had to do something to help this dumbfounded creature. Nigel was taking it slow as he drove towards the elephant, knowing that he had to be cautious to avoid spooking it. He gradually came closer and closer until he was only 15 or 20 meters away from the majestic creature. He pulled off and sat in his car in sheer stillness, never taking his eyes off the elephant. His gaze marveled at its wild beauty while also perceiving its distress and anguish, evidenced by the agonizing abscesses spoiling its body. Nigel's pupils drew together in shock when he first saw the big elephant waving with its trunk in his direction. Nigel was initially taken aback, but then he observed that the elephant was not acting aggressively. The worried creature had first lowered itself to its knees, then laid on the ground in front of it. The animal was in a very poor state of suffering. Nigel made a split-second decision that he carried out without hesitating for even a second. He stepped out of his car. He began to approach the gentle elephant carefully and cautiously. He then performed an incredible, touching gesture. He sat down several meters away from the elephant's head and began talking with it. Nigel could tell the animal was attentive, as though it felt a connection despite not understanding his words. So Nigel kept on chatting and rambling about any topics. It became noticeable that he was providing extraordinary solace for the exhausted beast. Eventually, he heard vehicles approaching. It was the other rangers. His heart raced as his colleagues arrived to help the poor elephant. Nigel had to reassure them that things were safe, so he put his professional persona into review and confidently spoke out loud to confirm the elephant wasn't violent. Subsequently, the scene started taking a positive trajectory, further signaling when the vets finally reached their destination. They all decided to tranquilize the animal first before starting the treatment. One of the vets stepped up and faced the task at hand. He took hold of a thick and long needle, his heart racing against the immense size of the elephant standing before him. With courage and precision, he walked to the rear of the giant beast and gingerly stabbed it. Though it flinched, it stayed relaxed, knowing it wasn't in danger. The tranquilizer quickly set into effect. Its eyes began to close together as droops of sleepy energy started to consume its conscious body. Just as the beating heart was about to slip into slumber, its eyes managed one last widened gaze. He stood in awe as he watched his trunk rise, gently grasping his ankle. With the strength and gentleness of a caring hand, the elephant's way of saying thank you, Nigel was brought to tears. He was deeply humbled by their sensitivity and intelligence, continually admired by their beauty. All of this and yet so much more. Nature had graced him with something truly remarkable, a magical moment with an extraordinary animal. Vets treated every cyst carefully and applied necessary creams and ointments to relieve the elephant from this much pain. Soon after the treatment, the elephant awakened and stood still on his feet. He looked fresh and pain-free now, and the vets were all satisfied. They all started to move towards their vehicle when they saw the elephant lifting his front legs and trunk in the air. They got worried about this act and wondered if the elephant was about to attack their vehicles. He stood tall for several seconds, letting out an ear-splittingly loud trumpet from his trunk. As his front feet returned to the ground, he waved his trunk at Nigel, apparently grateful for his assistance. Slowly and deliberately, the elephant gracefully turned away from the road, making a beeline towards the horizon beyond, and vanishing in a cloud of dust. He had seemingly embarked on a new and faraway destination. What would you do if you met such a suffering animal? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.